Zulaika was only 19, but her dreams were big. Living in a small village called Kisenda, Uganda, she spent her quiet moments imagining a life beyond washing dishes and cooking food. She wanted to study business, open her own shop one day, be something. But her husband, Baraka, never saw her dreams the way she did. Baraka was older, loud, and proud. He laughed when Zulaika talked about going back to school. "You? A businesswoman?" he'd sneer. "You're nothing without me." Every time she tried to speak about her goals, he shut her down with cruel words. To him, she was only a wife, meant to serve, not to think. One evening, Baraka invited some of his friends over. The laughter, the beer, the loud music filled their small home. Zulaika brought them food quietly, keeping her head down. But when she mentioned that she had gotten a letter from a school about a possible scholarship, Baraka exploded. "What nonsense is this?" he shouted. His friends watched with amusement. And then it happened. He slapped her hard, right there, in front of everyone. "Women like you don't deserve respect," he said coldly. The room fell silent, except for the ringing in her ears. Zulaika didn't cry, not then. She just stood there, stunned, her cheek burning and heartbreaking. In that moment, something inside her cracked, but something else began to burn. She realized she could stay silent, or she could find her way out. That night changed everything. That night, Zulaika sat alone on the cold floor, her face still stinging from the slap. The house was quiet now, only the sound of insects outside and the ticking of the old wall clock. Her tears fell silently, one after another, but no one saw, no one cared. She didn't scream, she didn't fight back, she just let the pain wash over her like rain. In her mind, her mother's voice came back to her, soft but strong. Sometimes silence builds storms. It was something her mother used to say when life got hard. Zulaika didn't fully understand it as a child, but now she did. Her silence wasn't weakness, it was fuel. It was the quiet before something powerful. Baraka didn't say sorry. He never did. Instead, the next morning, he acted like nothing had happened. He ate the breakfast she cooked. He barked out orders. He laughed at a joke on the radio. But not once did he look at her with regret. That slap wasn't just his hand. It was his pride. He liked feeling in control. He liked seeing her small and quiet. Every time Zulaika mentioned school, his voice turned sharp. "Are you still talking about that nonsense?" he'd say. "You can't even run this house properly, and you think you'll run a business?" When he wasn't mocking her, he was out flirting with girls in the neighborhood, coming home smelling of alcohol and cheap perfume. Zulaika stayed silent, not because she was scared, but because she was planning. Every cruel word he threw at her didn't break her. It carved a fire in her bones. She cried in secret, but her heart was no longer soft. She knew something had to change. She didn't know when or how, but something deep inside her whispered, "You're not staying here forever." Before they got married, Baraka had made Zulaika a promise. He held her hand, looked into her eyes and said, "After marriage, I'll support your education. I want you to succeed." She believed him. She trusted those words. That promise was the only reason she agreed to marry so young. She thought he'd be different. She thought he'd believe in her dreams. But months passed, and things changed. Baraka changed. Every time she brought up school, he brushed it off. "Later," he'd say. "This is not the time." And then one afternoon, something arrived, a scholarship letter, a real chance. A respected college in Kampala had offered her a place. Her hands shook as she held the envelope. This was her door to a new life. She waited for the right moment to show him, thinking maybe, just maybe, he'd remember his promise. Instead, he laughed. "Who told them to write to you? You think I'll let my wife run around a city like some cheap girl?" His face twisted with anger. He grabbed the letter from her hands, tore it in half, then again and again, until the pieces floated to the ground like broken wings. Zulaika stood frozen. Her chest felt tight, like her heart had been crushed. But she didn't scream. She didn't beg. She picked up the torn pieces quietly, walked into the other room, and cried into her pillow. But that fire inside her, it didn't die. The next week, when Baraka was out drinking, she knocked on her neighbor's door. Mariam, the daughter, was only a few years older than Zulaika, but she had a phone, internet, and hope. Together, they filled out the application again. Together, they clicked submit weeks later. Another letter arrived, this time hidden under Mariam's mattress. Zulaika had been accepted again. This time, she told no one, not yet. She had no money, no plan, and no permission. But she had one thing stronger than all of that, a dream that refused to die. The night before she left, Zulaika couldn't sleep. Her heart beat like a drum in her chest. She lay in bed, staring at the dark ceiling, listening to Baraka's loud snoring in the next room. She knew this was it, her only chance. If she stayed, her dreams would die. If she left, everything would change. At 4 a.m., the village was still asleep. The sky was dark, the air cold and quiet. Zulaika moved like a whisper. She had packed a small bag the night before, just a few clothes, her scholarship letter, and an old photo of her family. No money, no phone, just hope. Before stepping out, she walked into the small room where her little sister slept. She placed a folded note under her pillow. It said, "One day I'll come back for you. I love you. Never stop dreaming." Zulaika closed the door behind her, her eyes full of tears, but her steps steady. The walk to the main road felt endless. Every dog bark, every rustle in the bush made her jump, but she didn't stop, not even once. When she reached the old bus stop, her hands were shaking. The bus to Kampala was already there, dusty, crowded, and full of strangers. She climbed in. She didn't have enough for the full fare. She begged the conductor with trembling words, "Please, I just need to get to Kampala. I'll find work. I'll pay later." Maybe he saw something in her eyes, something fierce, something desperate. He nodded. As the bus pulled away, Zulaika looked out the window. Her village disappeared behind her, one tree at a time. Her stomach was empty, her future unclear, but her heart, it was finally free. She didn't know where she would sleep. She didn't know who would help her. But one thing was clear. She wasn't running away. She was running toward something, toward the girl she had always wanted to become. And no one, not even Baraka, was going to stop her now. Kampala was loud, fast and full of people, but Zulaika had never felt so alone. The city didn't wait for anyone. It didn't care about her dreams, her past, or her pain. But she had made it there, and she wasn't going back. The first few nights were the hardest. She had no place to stay. She slept behind buildings, on cold concrete, using her bag as a pillow. Hunger kept her awake. Fear kept her alert. But hope kept her alive. After days of searching, she found work at a small roadside food stall. The owner, a tired woman named Auntie Naka, gave her a chance. Zulaika washed plates, cleaned floors, and served customers. From morning till night, she worked with burning feet and an empty stomach. Some customers made rude comments. Some touched her without permission. She hated it, but she needed the job. And still, every night, no matter how tired she was, she went to class. She had enrolled in evening courses with the scholarship she fought so hard for. The lectures were long, the language hard, and sometimes she sat in class barely able to keep her eyes open. Once, she failed an important test. She cried in the bathroom, feeling like maybe Baraka was right, maybe she was useless. But something deep inside her refused to let go. She told herself, "I didn't come this far to give up now." Every day she pushed through. She studied under streetlights when the power went out. She ate leftover chapatis when she couldn't afford food. She kept going, 1 hour at a time, one small step closer to her dream. People began to notice her. Auntie Naka praised her work. Her teachers saw her effort. Even strangers began to respect her quiet strength. Life was still hard. Some nights she cried herself to sleep, but she was no longer the same girl who stood silent after that slap. She was stronger, wiser, fiercer. Zulaika didn't have everything figured out, but every scar, every failure, every hungry night was shaping her into something powerful. She wasn't just surviving, she was rising. Years went by, and Zulaika kept pushing, day by day, step by step. What started with washing dishes and studying at night slowly grew into something bigger. She learned everything: how to manage money, how to talk to customers, how to turn small ideas into real action. Her hands, once tired from scrubbing floors, now wrote business plans. Her voice, once silent, now led teams. She saved every little coin she could. She skipped meals, avoided parties, and wore the same shoes for years. While others laughed and relaxed, Zulaika was planning, dreaming, building. Then, one day, she finally took the risk. With a small loan, a second-hand refrigerator, and a heart full of courage, she opened her own food supply business. She named it ZulFresh. It started small, selling fresh fruits and vegetables to local restaurants and small shops. She made deliveries herself, riding on the back of boda bodas, even in the rain. But what made ZulFresh different was Zulaika herself. She was honest, always on time, always fair. She treated her workers with respect. She remembered what it felt like to be invisible, so she made sure no one in her company ever felt that way. Word spread. One restaurant told another. Customers kept coming back. ZulFresh began to grow, faster than she expected. Within 2 years, she had 5 employees, her own delivery van, and deals with major supermarkets. Investors started calling. Journalists wrote about her. From housewife to CEO became a trending headline. Her name appeared on radio, in newspapers, and online. People couldn't believe it. The same girl who had once been called useless had built something from nothing. She didn't forget where she came from. Every success made her think of those nights sleeping on the street, those tears in the dark. But now, she stood tall, strong, unshakable. Zulaika wasn't just running a business. She was rewriting her story. And slowly, the world was listening. The woman once slapped in front of friends had now become a name they couldn't ignore. The same voice that was once silenced. Now it led a brand. Now it inspired thousands. One afternoon, a local journalist came to interview Zulaika. She was nervous, but ready. This was her chance to tell the world her story. The story no one wanted to hear before. The camera started rolling, and she spoke with honesty and strength. "I was 19 when he slapped me," she said quietly, her voice steady. "He called me useless, but I was not. I had a dream. I had a fire inside me that no one could put out." She told how she left everything behind, how she slept hungry, worked hard, and kept studying even when the world seemed against her. She didn't hide her pain. She showed her scars, not to ask for pity, but to prove how far she had come. The interview was titled, "He Slapped Me. I Built an Empire." When it was posted online, no one expected what happened next. The video exploded. Within hours, thousands of people were watching, sharing, and commenting. Women across Africa sent messages saying, "This is my story too." Men said, "I never understood." People called her brave, strong, and inspiring. Her words echoed on phones, computers, and TVs. "Every woman has worth," she said in the interview. "Even when people tried to silence you, your voice matters." Zulaika didn't become famous because she built a business. She became a symbol of silent strength, of rising from pain, and of never giving up. News stations invited her for more interviews. Schools asked her to speak to students. Social media pages filled with her picture and her story. Some people saw her as a hero, others saw themselves in her. But for Zulaika, it wasn't about fame, it was about hope. She wanted every girl who felt small, scared, or stuck to know this. You can rise, you can fight, you can be more than what they say. That interview didn't just tell her story, it changed the story for thousands of others. And for the first time, Zulaika's voice wasn't just heard, it was felt. One busy morning at ZulFresh, Zulaika was reviewing some papers when her HR manager walked into her office holding a folder. "You need to see this," he said quietly, handing it over. Zulaika took the folder without looking until she opened it and froze. It was a job application, and the name at the top made her heart skip a beat. Baraka, her first husband, the man who called her useless, slapped her in front of his friends and tried to tear down her dreams. Now, years later, his name was right there, asking for a job at her company. She stared at the paper. Baraka's details showed a man broken by life, divorced, unemployed, with no real skills or experience. The man who once promised to support her education was now asking for work, and he didn't even recognize the name ZulFresh. The HR manager looked at her nervously. "What do you want to do?" he asked. Zulaika smiled, but it wasn't warm. It was cold. A smile that held years of pain, strength, and silent anger. She thought about the nights she spent hungry and tired, the years she fought to build something better, the promises he broke, and the hand that hit her. She thought about the note she left for her little sister when she ran away, and how far she had come. This wasn't just a job application, it was a reckoning. Baraka needed this job, needed her mercy. But she wasn't the same girl anymore. She wasn't the one who stayed silent, afraid and small. Zulaika leaned back in her chair and said, "We'll schedule an interview." Inside, her heart was steady. Outside, her face showed nothing but calm. It was time to face the past. and show Baraka what worth really means. The day of the interview arrived faster than Zulaika expected. She dressed carefully, calm but ready. As she walked into the boardroom, her heart was steady, but her mind was a whirlwind of memories. She opened the door, and there he was, Baraka. He was sitting at the table, eyes wide and frozen in shock. When he saw her, he stood up so quickly, his chair scraped the floor. "Zulaika," he stammered, like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. She looked at him, not with anger or tears, but with quiet power. She nodded slowly. "Yes, Baraka, it's me." He swallowed hard, his proud face now small and unsure. She took a seat across from him and spoke clearly, her voice strong. "I'm the woman you slapped in front of your friends, the one you called worthless, the girl you thought would never make it." Baraka didn't say a word. The room felt heavy with silence, thick and sharp. His eyes dropped to the table, avoiding hers. Zulaika held his gaze for a moment longer, then continued. "I left everything behind. I fought through hunger, pain and fear, and now I run this company." Her words weren't just facts. They were a statement of truth, a declaration of her strength. Baraka looked at her again, this time with something new, regret, but it was too late for apologies. The others in the room watched quietly, feeling the weight of the moment. The man who once tried to break her was now sitting across from the woman he never believed in, now a leader, a boss, a woman in control. Zulaika's voice softened, but stayed firm. "This interview is your chance. Prove you deserve to be here." Baraka nodded slowly, humbled. No words came easily from him. In that moment, everything had changed. The power was no longer his, it was hers. Zulaika had risen, and now she was holding the future, on her terms. The day of the interview arrived faster than Zulaika expected. She dressed carefully, calm but ready. As she walked into the boardroom, her heart was steady, but her mind was a whirlwind of memories. She opened the door, and there he was, Baraka. He was sitting at the table, eyes wide and frozen in shock. When he saw her, he stood up so quickly, his chair scraped the floor. "Zulaika," he stammered, like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. She looked at him, not with anger or tears, but with quiet power. She nodded slowly. "Yes, Baraka, it's me." He swallowed hard, his proud face now small and unsure. She took a seat across from him and spoke clearly, her voice strong. "I'm the woman you slapped in front of your friends, the one you called worthless, the girl you thought would never make it." Baraka didn't say a word. The room felt heavy with silence, thick and sharp. His eyes dropped to the table, avoiding hers. Zulaika held his gaze for a moment longer, then continued. "I left everything behind. I fought through hunger, pain and fear, and now I run this company." Her words weren't just facts. They were a statement of truth, a declaration of her strength. Baraka looked at her again, this time with something new, regret, but it was too late for apologies. The others in the room watched quietly, feeling the weight of the moment. The man who once tried to break her was now sitting across from the woman he never believed in, now a leader, a boss, a woman in control. Zulaika's voice softened, but stayed firm. "This interview is your chance. Prove you deserve to be here." Baraka nodded slowly, humbled. No words came easily from him. In that moment, everything had changed. The power was no longer his, it was hers. Zulaika had risen, and now she was holding the future, on her terms. After the interview, Zulaika sat quietly, thinking. Baraka had faced her, humbled and silent. But forgiveness wasn't the same as forgetting. She knew she couldn't hire the man who once tried to destroy her dreams. Instead, she reached into her drawer and pulled out a thick envelope. She handed it to Baraka, her eyes steady. "This is a donation," she said softly, "to a shelter for women who have been hurt, like I was." Baraka looked confused, his hands trembling as he took the envelope. "Why?" he asked quietly. "Because it's time you use your hands for better things," she replied. "Not to hurt, but to help." He said nothing more. Zulaika stood up, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. She wasn't carrying his pain anymore. Later, at a big event where she was invited to speak, Zulaika stood before a crowd of hopeful faces. She looked out at them and said, "Every woman who has ever been called worthless has worth. She may feel broken, silent, invisible, but inside her is a fire no one can put out. All she needs is space to rise." Her words spread like wildfire, touching hearts across the country. She wasn't just a businesswoman anymore. She was a beacon of hope. Zulaika's journey showed the world that pain could be power, and silence could become a voice. She proved that no matter how deep the wounds, healing and strength were possible. And for every woman watching, she gave this message: you are not useless. You are not forgotten. You have worth, and your time to rise is now.